So going completely off script here, guys. Last week we had a state of play which gave us a new look at the game, and it revealed a lot of stuff which I have seen quite the uproar about online. The main thing being, we found out that the game has only been 20 characters for its initial roster size, which, God, you know, in this day and age, it feels pretty small. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of expecting a lot more. You know, I watch YouTubers like Maximilian who predicted around 30 characters. When I did my Marvel vs. Capcom prediction video as well, that was quite a few characters there that I had to, you know, kind of figure out what to do with. But just 20, man, it seems so limiting. And to top it all off, you know, the biggest thing that I saw online the other day was people upset about the inclusion of Danger in the Unbreakable X-Men roster, just because, you know, at the end of the day, it replaces other characters that people would have wanted to see. You know, the biggest one that I kept seeing complaints of was Cyclops, which I completely understand. You know, he is, besides Wolverine, the X-Man, right? Not counting X-Man himself, obviously, right? But, you know, it's one of those where you think you could kind of see where a dev's mentality is going when designing a game, and they completely throw a curveball at you. You know, case in point, Magic. You know, being Arc Systems, I would have already assumed that she was going to be in the game at some point. You know, I kind of view them as like the edgelord anime fighting game character design guys, so I'm not surprised that she's in here. You know, she looks a lot more tamer than I thought she was going to look, to be honest with you. Spider-Man looks pretty different, like that's a new look for him, Iron Man especially, so seeing a Magic that looks more traditional to me, like that was kind of a surprise there, right? But, you know, we have 20 characters. They also revealed that each team is going to be around 4 characters, right? Because we have 20 characters, break that up into 4, that's 5 teams, if I did my math right. Hopefully I did. If not, you guys can shit on me in the comments. So, what I've taken upon myself to do, I did some quick math, I did some logistical thinking, if you will, and I have tried to pinpoint what teams are being represented in the game, and based on the characters that we have now, I'm trying to see not just who the leaders are of each team, but more so what direction the devs are going in when it comes to the decision to make in this game. Because again, you know, people complain about Cyclops, and I know in one dev post they said that, oh, a lot of main characters are not in the game because of lore reasons, they're off fighting, something like that, but it's hard to believe that when, you know, we have Matt Murdock in the back of the stage, just chilling out a window, like, dude, like, do something, right? Shumagoras is right up there, or my bad, Gargantos, however you want to call him. And then we have the X-Mansion stage, and all the main guys are just chilling there, like, dude, I feel like some of them could have been in here, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't need the Smash Bros. Background character treatment. But regardless, you know, we already have our X-Men filled out. The next team that I personally want to talk about is going to be the Avengers, right? The easiest ones to knock out. The shitty thing, though, like I said, we only have 4 characters that we could add to there. And, again, I feel like as much as I want to predict where this is going, and I'm sure other people already are, I don't think any of us are going to be right, you know? The way that I approach making rosters in my mind, and, you know, now that I have the powers bestowed upon me to do this on YouTube, I try to go for picks that I would want to see, as well as what the general people would want to see, and then I take into consideration characters like Danger, and, you know, gotta throw in some curveballs that I don't think are going to make anyone happy, right? But again, being limited to 4 characters, it's rough, because I am viewing the Avengers as 4 characters, and 3 of them are already here. And obviously, that's going to be Iron Man, Captain America, and honestly, the wrench in my grand scheme is Star-Lord. I think Star-Lord, if the game had a few more characters, he would have been the leader of the Guardians. And we'll get into the Guardians a little bit later. But I hate thinking about MCU synergy. I know it pisses a lot of people off, but I can see the devs counting Star-Lord as an Avenger in this game, which leaves us with only 1 slot left for the Avengers, and then the question becomes like, well, who do you add? Based on what I've seen from the roster so far, which again isn't much, I think we need a grappler, and as much as I would want Thor to be in the game, I think the best choice to fill that grappler Avenger role would be the Hulk, right? You know, we need a big, tanky guy, takes up half the screen, focuses on like close-up combat, kind of like Wolverine, but they described him more as a tank. but I just want to see grabs. I want to see him do the Loki slam attack, right? I want to see him chucking rocks at you, Hulk slamming the floor. And again, like, I don't sound excited saying this because I wish I could talk about more Avengers. You know, like, I would love to see them make Ant-Man work. It's weird not having Hawkeye or Vision or Scarlet Witch when they could perfectly fit in here. But if I had to pick one more Avenger, he's a classic one on the roster. He's a popular Marvel character. He's one of the big three when I was growing up. That's Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Hulk. I have to add Hulk into the game, you know, so that's going to be my fourth Avenger there. But moving on, we have our next team up here, and, you know, if Robbie Reyes isn't going to be a part of the Avengers like he is in modern comics, I think he's going to be a part of the Midnight Suns, right? And the Midnight Suns have kind of been getting some motion in recent years. You know, they had that video game recently. They're trying to get Blade off the ground, which, I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen, right? There's rumors of Ghost Rider ending up in Doomsday, which I'm excited to see because that's my guy. So, if the Midnight Suns are going to be in this game, I think the most prominent member that we could include in there would have to be Doctor Strange, right? I think he fills in a good role of being both in the magical side of the Marvel Universe, as well as the spooky side as well. And again, like, I know these terms are like, you know, whatever, okay, you're just saying a bunch of schlock buzzwords, whatever, but these are kind of similar terms that I used in my Marvel vs. Capcom video. You know, Doctor Strange, prominent guy, he's the first guy you think of when you think of the, you know, mystical magic side of Marvel. So I think he's going to fill in that role pretty well as a zoner. I feel like they could do a lot of cool stuff as well with his magical spells. The most important one being, you know, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, which could, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking it up here, you know, pause or delay attacks. You know, they could chain characters down to set up for combos. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Doctor Strange. The only thing about him is, you know, Danger already sets up a lot of traps, which I feel Doctor Strange will do similarly, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But moving on next to our next member of the Midnight Suns, it's going to be Blade. You know, I was thinking about a lot of characters that could have been in the game, and again, Danger is going to be my focal point. You're going to hear me say her name a lot in this video, just because she's a good litmus test of kind of where the devs are going with this. You know, they said that they're going to include characters that have never been in a fighting game before, and she's definitely an odd pick. Right, like, am I happy that the Danger Room is in the game as a playable character taking up other slots? No, again, like, I was a really champion Nightcrawler in my Marvel vs. Capcom roster prediction. But it is what it is. But looking at motion currently, we had Blade in Deadpool, he has his own video game coming out, movie who knows when, he's in Marvel Rivals, and they were hyping him up for a few seasons there. I think it'd be a great addition to the roster. You know, they could do a lot with his vampiric powers. I could see him being like a fast yet bulky character. You know, he uses his swords. He could fucking, I don't know. He does the red mist vampire shit, right? I just think he'd be cool. You know, you could do a lot of cool stuff with him, like having vampires assist him somehow, or different like monster type abilities. That's basically what I'm focusing on here, but Midnight Suns, Doctor Strange, Blade, Ghost Rider, I think that's good enough right there. But if I had to include one more, and this is for me, it'd have to be Moon Knight. Again, Arxis, let's be honest here, they're not going to pass up the chance to give their own Moon Knight design, right? Because again, it's Arxis. They're going to make an edgy character whenever they can. I think Moon Knight would go extremely hard, honestly. Again, he's a character that hasn't been in a fighting game before, at least not the Marvel vs. Capcom ones. And, you know, he has his little moonerangs, I guess. You know, he has his batons that he uses. He could have Khonshu somehow come in for an assist. I think it'd be really cool to have Moon Knight in there. But see, that's already our Avengers and our Midnight Suns filled out. So the next team that I want to focus on here is going to be Doctor Doom's team. I think he's going to be the leader of his own team. I don't see how he wouldn't be. And the thing that this roster is definitely lacking are villains, which I know is kind of cliche, but I think Doctor Doom is going to be leading a team of villains in this game. Does it kind of fit his character? No, not really. He doesn't usually align himself with, you know, other villains. Not necessarily nowadays, for the most part. And I saw a theory online saying that Doctor Doom would probably be leading a cosmic team in this game, and Star-Lord would be a part of that. but I just don't see Star-Lord teaming up with Doctor Doom either. You know, so that's why I'm including Star-Lord in my Avengers roster here. But when it comes to the villains that I want to see in this game, I went for some obvious picks, but I also went for some characters that, again, have not been in a fighting game before. I think that's something that the devs are really going to try to focus on to kind of make this game feel like its own thing, you know, because it'd be very easy to just have the same characters from Marvel vs. Capcom do similar things, but we're seeing that with Wolverine, and we're seeing that with Storm, that they play a little bit differently than you would expect, especially Doctor Doom, right? So the first villain that I think Doctor Doom would have on his team is going to be Loki, surprisingly. And I know he's more of an anti-hero nowadays to a good guy in the MCU, but if we're not going to have Thor in our game, I think Loki would fit that role pretty well. Issues that come across with Loki are just that he might play similarly to Doctor Strange to some extent, you know, with just like his whole magic shebang. But as long as I feel like they focus on Loki's ability to kind of transform and change his form and shape, and, you know, maybe he could affect other gameplay elements like how characters move or react to his attacks, I think you can make a really fun kit for this character that I think would fit pretty well. He also has his long staff, so he wouldn't necessarily be short range, you know, he could have some movement there. As a super, I see him summoning, you know, his wolves, maybe like a frost giant, I don't know, but I think that'd be cool to see. Second villain that I want to talk about is going to be Thanos. I think, again, Thanos is too prominent of a Marvel character to not include in a roster, and I grappled between Thanos and Ultron, just because the story mode of this game seems to revolve around Shi'ar technology or something like that going on, right? It showed a Gladiator being defeated, and we have a mysterious villain too that hasn't been revealed, so I don't know if it's going to be one of these guys that I'm talking about here, or if it's going to be a completely new OC, but again, I think Thanos is too prominent over Ultron for sure. I really wanted to include Ultron in this, but I just don't see a spot for him, especially because he was already in Marvel vs. Capcom, which, again, I need to emphasize, that doesn't mean that a character is not going to be in the game just because they were in Marvel vs. Capcom, because then most of these characters wouldn't be in this game, right? But I'm trying to give a new shot to characters that have not been in a fighting game before, which is why I think my riskiest pick, which, if I'm correct about this, I will go and get a bunch of scratch-offs for the lottery, it's going to be Kang. I think, despite the plans for Kang in the MCU falling apart, I think Kang has a real shot at being in this game because he has been a major Avengers villain for decades. You know, his stories go way back. God, and not to lose steam in my own conversation here, but I hate that we live in an era where the MCU kind of dictates what goes on in the comics now. It used to be the other way around, now not so much, right? But I'm hoping that you could do a lot of cool stuff with Kang and his other, like, variants and forms across time. You know, he has a lot of cool tech at his disposal. You know, he has his force fields, he has his guns, he can become Rama Tut and throw a pyramid at you, you know, like just something cool like that. I think he has a lot of potential, and that's what I'm looking for in a character like him, right? But then my last two characters that I want to talk about, I think Spider-Man in this game is not going to be an Avenger, but I think he's going to be a street tier Young Avengers character, right? And I know your first thought is that Peter Parker doesn't fit that role and that should have gone to Miles Morales, and I feel like in an alternate universe, Miles Morales would have been in this game, but you know the devs would have been strangled out in the streets if they put Miles Morales over Spider-Man. But I feel like we're going to get to that point one day where Miles kind of is in a game without Peter, right? I'm going to put Nova in here. I'm going based off the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon where they were teamed up together. I'm going with the Sam Alexander route, however, though, because I think Spider-Man, Miss Marvel, and Nova are going to be in a team together, and I think that's going to synergize pretty well. Does it make sense with being street level? No, and, you know, you can make the argument that if Nova's going to be in the game, he should be with Star-Lord for, like, the cosmic side, but, again, I'm just kind of going for that, like, Young Avengers Champions New York route, I guess, you know? This is honestly where my whole theory kind of falls apart, but that's the fun of it, right? You know, like, I'm curious to see what you guys think down below of what teams are going to look like, so please let me know. But that brings us to our last character, and you know, after much debate, I think our last character is gonna be Venom. I think it's gonna be Venom, and honestly, it just comes down to Arxis is not gonna pass up the chance to give their own take on Venom. It's a Spider-Man character, and you Spider-Man is Spider-Man. He's gonna get all the rep, right? Just like how Batman gets all the rep in Injustice and other DC games. So I think it's gonna be Venom. I'm a big Venom fan myself, so I'm not upset about that. I think if they wanted to add their own twist to it, it would be Dylan Brock instead of Eddie Brock. And that's all I can really say. It's Venom. Like, come on. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, you want me to, like, stand up on a podium and, like, show you a PowerPoint of why Venom should be in a Marvel game? Like, come on, dude. But, you know, these are going to be my 20 characters here. This is what it's looking like. I don't know. I feel like... I don't know how I feel like. I gotta be honest. Like, the devs really threw a curveball with Danger and the 20 character limits, so... I'm hoping I get at least some of these right. It'd be hilarious if I get none of them right? And then, like, I'll just shut up forever about rosters. But who knows, you know? We also have our DLC coming along as well, and we have 4 DLC characters and a stage. I think we're all thinking it's going to be the Fantastic Four and the Baxter Building as a stage. However, 4 Fantastic Four characters plus Doom, that's 5. And that's an entire team right there from the comics, when a lot of them were not in this game for other teams as well. So I don't know how I feel about that. I think you could also go the Guardians route, how I was mentioning earlier, just because accessories for this game, for the like early purchases, are Howard the Duck and Cosmo, which, because of the MCU, are kind of like more on the galactic side of things. You also get the Infinity Gauntlet as an accessory as well, I believe. So that's kind of why I added Thanos as well. But I could see it being the Guardians and like a collector's like trophy room stage or something cool like that, you know, kind of like what we're having in Rivals right now. Characters for that, you know, it could be Rocket and Groot. They're always going to be together no matter what. I could see Gamora, and then as like the 4th one, if they want to like not do Mantis or Drax, which again I think would be cool. I would love to see them in a fighting game. They could go like Phyla-Vell or God, who's another one? Oh, Adam Warlock would be cool, because then you could have him turn into Warlock and kind of like have like a dual character in that way. If it was my way, I'd have Sentry in this game, obviously, right? But where am I going to put him? But, you know, that's a discussion for another day. But let me know what you guys think down below. My name is Demies. Thanks so much for joining me for this unscripted rant. You know, it's not as polished as my other videos are. But, hey, you know, I had to get it out there. You know, this is my soapbox to stand on. Thank you for standing on it with me. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Adios.